Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. Please watch the whole video. I know it might be long, but it'll add context that I think is very important for my perspective on what happened to Salman Rushdie. Hope I'm pronouncing the name right. An author of several renowned books and controversial books. He was shanked in the neck and in New York. So I have some opinions on this, and I hope you judge me fairly for what I'm about to say. But before we get into that, I want you to know what kind of bibliophile nerd I am. And so, to start off, here's some of the books that I have read that to you may not seem controversial, but to others they are. Okay? So this is with Karl Marx's Das Kapital, doing the Masonic hand signal. Some people don't think anybody should read his works, but I did. Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian and other essays. He can be a bit sassy, but nonetheless, when I was in my atheistic phase, I read his. Now, please don't get upset about this book, but The Mustaches Man Mein Kampf book. Yes, I read it. And people tried to ban this book. Some people would want to hurt me for reading this book. Some people might not understand why you would read such a book. But I read it nonetheless. This is one that maybe if you're not American, may not make sense to you. But it does for those on the conservative side. A book on critical race theory. I do not agree with critical race theory. However, I read their book in order to understand their perspective and be able to hold conversations with them. I don't want critical race theory to be taught in schools. It is under different names, but I read it nonetheless before I criticized their philosophy. Now, some of you may not, if you're not American and you're not into economics, you may not think this book is offensive, but this is what I read, which I thought was kind of cool, by Milton Friedman's Capitalism and Freedom. Some people really hated him. Most of my liberal professors hated him a lot, condemned him, and they really did not like the Chicago School of Economics. But I read his book anyways, to hear what he had to say. Now, liberals, they may not like this particular figure. She's okay. Candace Owens' book, Blackout. She's not too kind towards us Muslims. She is, a very blunt, punchy figure. But I read her book to see what she had to say. I've also read Tommy Lauren's book. And I'm not shy from reading, different perspectives now. For these ones, this is somebody who does not like Islam very much. These are Bill Warner's book. Bill Warner, PhD, Measuring Muhammad. Peace be upon him. Bill Warner's The Life of Muhammad, Sirah. Bill Warner's The Hadith, Traditions of Muhammad. Peace be upon him. A 2-hour Quran by the same author. And Sharia Law for Non-Muslims. He is part of that group, Center for the Study of Political Islam. And, my point is to show you these books that I don't shy away from challenging my ideas, from engaging in texts that some people find to be horrific. I am not a book burner or a book banner. The only books I think that should be banned are some of the rainbow groups, very graphic sexual education books that have pornographic images. I don't agree with that form of sexual education. That's the only group I would denounce. However, when it comes to libraries and information that should be available, I think the fun part about a library is having a treasure trove of interesting books to entertain people and get them to read and think. I have other books but I didn't want to belay the point about what I like to read and how much I've tested my own mind and challenged my own biases and whatnot. So, unfortunately, I have not had the opportunity to read Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses in order to give you an educated textual analysis approach to his book. Would I read it? I would read it. And the book existing doesn't necessarily offend me, because I feel if someone writes something controversial, it's up to the strong minds to wrestle with those ideas and make the book go down in value by writing things that are better in value. Now, impulse control comes from exposing yourself to many ideas. Everyone knows I'm kind of blunt, tart, have a temper, and that happens with people and individual ideas on a dialogical type of exchange. But when it comes to books, I don't shy away from reading controversial books, because after you've read so much, you get a thicker skin and tolerance level. And when you've cross-referenced things, read different genres, you're actually able to come up with answers. And if not, you know how to find them and philosophize on them. As someone who loves philosophy, when you get really good at it, you don't get as offended by punchy, tart texts. But if you have not been exposed to very tough mental exercises when it comes to patience, emotions, ideas and stuff within different books, it's harder for you to control your doubts and anger and frustrations, and you lash out. I do really well in the world of academia, the world of books and knowledge, of controlling my temper and exposing myself to new ideas, but I might get mad at other things and not be able to do well, maybe punch somebody in the nose. But I wouldn't punch an author in the nose or something like that because they wrote a very sassy, tart book. Now, some people wrote on other forums that I looked at, import the third world, get the third world. What I hope you to remember is that New York is a liberal run area, and New York City, areas around it, several parts of New York, unfortunately, have defunded their police departments, and they make it very hard for people to have their Second Amendment rights, which lead to self-defense. If you remember, I read the American Hunter magazine, okay? And if you recall, I read the positive stories about uses of personal firearms and women, and stuff, defending themselves against attacks. I'm a huge believer in the right to self-defense if you're being attacked, and I'm a member of the National Rifle Association, the NRA, and so I'm a big person in defending yourself against attacks. So what I mean to point that out, the reason why I'm saying that, is because the secular liberal atheists are not really into law and order right now. So when you look at what happened to Salman Rushdie, you can say, yes, that person shouldn't have done it. But I want you to look at the other side of the picture. I want you to look at how security was low. I want you to look about how it's up to you to defend yourself. And that's why people have to go train at the gun range. They have to get their concealed carry permit. They have to be educated by an instructor on how to use a firearm. And that you may think you don't need one, but you do. Why? Because even if you're not a controversial figure, I want you to look up in your spare time people who were attacked at Taco Bell for making the food wrong. I saw a news story the other day where a guy at a McDonald's was shot because the fries were cold. Okay, America is a very wild place sometimes. Back in the day, I've been in Walmart, and I've seen people fight in the aisles over nonsensical stuff. And violence is something American as apple pie. So it's not necessarily fair to say, oh, a third world Muslim came, caused violence. What is America coming to? This is why immigration is bad. Rather, I want you to look at a broad picture as well, and look at how many American prisons are filled with violent criminals. Okay, America has a huge prison population for a reason, and I want you to see how you can prevent things from like this happening again. Okay? The way you do this is you toughen up by reading things you don't like. It's not easy. We all have our buttons, but we have to use our words, and violence comes when someone touches you first. That's how I look at it. If someone were to attack my child verbally, then I would do something. But when it comes to like ideas, when it comes to debates, exchange of knowledge, we have to be firm, and this is the moment where we are challenged to use our minds, articulate our reasoning, and belate the point, and see what happens, and accept when someone doesn't accept our ideals. You know? So, I encourage you to make yourself tougher by exposing yourself to different thoughts. Now, I've been attacked heavily in the past by, unfortunately, my fellow Muslims before I was a revert and after I became a revert, because of I read so many different topics. And some people don't understand this because they only stick to this one thing, and they are afraid, I understand why, of people getting lost and mixing up their ideas. But not everybody is led astray by exposing themselves to tough knowledge. Okay? And remember, I understand not everyone is built for that kind of arena. Right? Some people can't handle rhetoric, and they don't want to go through philosophical reasoning, and they don't like theology. They don't want to debate politics, and they want things fast, like TikTok 3-minute clickbait stuff. I understand. Okay? But for people like me, if I were to read someone's tart book, controversial book, the more controversial you make it, the more I want to read it, and that's the truth. Some of the authors that I picked was just because they were controversial. And when I read the book, I was like, that was weird. Okay. And then with another subject, I'll read it and be like, oh, I see what the other person says. So, in the world of ideas, of knowledge, and information, you correct them with a different methodology. When it comes to wartime, defending your property, defending your life, defending your community, that's when you use more than just words. But when it comes to offensive authors or offensive comedians, people who are essentially given their, when you're, how do I put it? When you are in a position of the podium, okay, you're given more permission than the average person, because you have to say what is authentically on your mind so that we can get at it. Today, people are afraid to say who they'd vote for sometimes. They don't want to lose their job. They're afraid to say what a woman is. They're afraid of everything because of the cancel culture censorship that economically destroys them, and now the normalization of violence over words. Okay? We can't grow and become better and tougher and intellectually astute if we become fragile to these things. It's more fun and educational to see two minds come together who are on opposing spectrums, and seeing the wonder and the fireworks of their minds that come when they are locked in, just the witticisms. That is what we should arrange. That is actually more effective. Okay? And something I've had to learn, instead of going head on to certain people, there are tons of liberals, example, who I want to just go straight on and just name them and hammer it home my point. But I realize sometimes I have to go around mentioning them and just mention the idea itself, and that'll be much more effective, reach more people, without drawing attention to the person whom I'm trying to discredit. So if you don't like an author, one of the best things to do is to study the work, process it, create a thesis, write something down, create a video, create points against them, and do your best in that way. Because these people, I understand the person probably felt righteous indignation. They had a tense heat of the moment. You know, when you are so angry, you get blinded and you are overtaken with adrenaline, and it's hard for you to be rational. So we have to make sure that we have dynamic, more effective approaches to taking on critics of Islam. Because today, we have too many tools at our disposal to go the easy route of violence. Violence should be for when you're being oppressed by the government, targeted by cartels, you know, defending yourself against a homeless crackhead. There are times when force is needed. But in the world of ideas, I would argue the more effective approach is creating counterpoints and then posting that on media where people can consume it, hear it, reflect, you know, analyze it, and then make their own conclusions. Because sometimes you have to take the slower approach, the harder, more boring approach. I know it's not easy. I make long videos. Sometimes people, they don't even watch 5 minutes of it, and then they make reaction videos, and then they didn't watch the full thing. And so I understand that in today's time, it's very hard to stay motivated making educational content for people who are not interested in testing and growing their minds, and they're more interested in entertainment, pornography, clickbait, you know, jump cut editing, stuff like that. So I hope you understand my point, and I hope you can join me in the pursuit of knowledge. Not get upset that I read controversial books and that I'm inviting you to also read controversial books. But if you know your mind is easily confused, easily led astray, by all means, study with a tutor if you can't do it on your own. I understand some Muslims, they do not enjoy reading things outside because they worry about protecting their faith. I understand. But I guess this is just a call for people to level up and have discernment, because some of the wisest people in the world had to hear the other side. Because you only know sometimes if you have a fault in your reasoning when you hear the opposition. Okay? And that's why you have to make sure you have a good balance and a tough skin to handle ideas and accept when you lose a debate. Accept when you can't convince somebody. You try hard, you do what you can, and you live to see another day, and you put your best foot forward. So I hope you also will have some more patience so that we don't see another attack like that, because in today's age, this type of action truly is not necessary. I know it may be temporarily feel like a victory for some, but in reality, I feel like nothing was actually gained besides threats. And I understand the power of threats is potent. I understand. But persuasion is a more noble path and can gather more minds. And as you write refutations, think about refutations as well. You yourself will develop and become more strong, and people will benefit more from that than if you just lashed out with physical violence, because nobody really got to hear what was it that made you snap. They only get to see the moment of your mental breakdown. So I hope you understood my point, and maybe this will help you judge me more fairly as well. But again, I understand not everyone's a giant nerd like me, and everybody takes hours of their time every day to do it for free. I understand. I know what I'm asking you is a lot. But in the end, it makes the world a better place if we can learn to withstand people's tart opinions. It's not easy. It's a skill you have to develop, but nonetheless, it's beneficial. So I hope this was a balanced approach to the subject, and I hope I didn't offend anybody, and I really just hope that you see some of my valid points. I'll be very curious as to what you have to say. Have a good day.